Well, good morning. America is the most generous country in the world when it comes to legal immigration. People who follow the rules and come to our country and want to become part of our great American body politic. What is a disaster, an unmitigated disaster, is the open borders policy of the previous administration, something that President Trump, thankfully, has brought to a very quick end. But unfortunately, there are a lot of people still in the country who are committing heinous crimes, including murder of innocent American citizens. And that needs to stop. Not only does that need to be prosecuted under state law, it needs to be prosecuted under federal law. So what we are doing here today is announcing a bill that will provide the option of the death penalty to a federal prosecution against an illegal alien for killing an American citizen. No one knows more than these families of these innocent victims that about the threat that this poses to our communities and to innocent individuals. Justice, of course, must be served, and that's why we're here today. I'm leading my colleagues in introducing a bill that will enshrine President Trump's executive order to make sure that after he leaves office, no subsequent president can rescind that executive order. What President Biden did during his first term, which is to basically rescind virtually all the executive orders that President Trump put into place. So while we agree with President Trump's executive order, we want to make sure that it has the benefit of being codified into the permanent law. And we're making sure that no Democrat will ever be able to undo this good work in the future. We're also doing what Democrats won't do, and that is we are taking action to achieve justice for the victims and to finally hold these murderers accountable. Senator Daines.
I want to applaud and thank Senator Cornyn for his leadership on this most important issue. He's doing exactly the right thing to codify what President Trump has done through his leadership in keeping America safe with his executive order. Serious crime requires serious consequences because that also means a serious deterrence. Illegal aliens who murder American citizens are really committing two serious crimes. They were here illegally, and they've murdered an American citizen. We must hold them accountable and deter this from happening again. In Montana, now you think about illegals flooding into Texas, but we have this crisis in Montana, my hometown of Bozeman, Montana. This illegal alien from Mexico stabbed to death a 19-year-old young man in my hometown of Bozeman. It was pre-planned, deliberate murder of a Montanan, and yet this man only received a 40-year sentence. That is unacceptable. I commend President Trump. I commend the strong and bold leadership of Senator John Cornyn for getting tough on illegal immigration and crime to make our communities safe again.
Thank you. Senator Tuberville.
Thank you, Senator Cornyn. Thank you for leading on this bill. You know, it's really sad we've gotten to this point. Over the last 4 years, the Biden-Harris administration, they welcomed more than 10 million illegal immigrants into our country with open arms. It wasn't like that there was any resistance. Many of these people are murderers, rapists, terrorists, you name it. We got a problem with it. As a direct result, Laken Riley, Rachel Morin are no longer with us today. We keep hearing those two names, and it becomes more and more prevalent with other people. These young women had their entire lives in front of them. They were murdered at the direct result of Democrat open border policies. Case closed. Thankfully, President Trump, as you've heard, is restoring law and order in our country. And day one in the Oval Office, he made an executive order requiring a death penalty for illegals. And I'm 100% for that. The bill we are introducing today would make this executive order permanent. We have several that we have to do that way. This is one we absolutely need to do. It's simple. If you're in this country illegally, you murder an American citizen, you face the death penalty. You know, we have to stop incentivizing crime in this country. It is rampant. Every morning I get up and read, and I see the crime that is escalating in the streets. If you kill an American citizen, though, you have to pay the price, whether you're illegal or legal. I've always been for that. That's justice. It sends a strong message, and that's what the American people deserve. No American family should ever have to bury a loved one because of a woke politician here in Washington, D.C., who chose to harbor criminals and murderers instead of enforcing the law. Nobody. We will not allow our communities to be turned into hunting grounds for foreign national murderers. We're not going to allow that to happen. President Trump has essentially stopped the flow of illegal immigrants at our border, thank God. But we have to still deal with the millions of people that the Biden administration has let in. Republicans in Congress, we have to do our part. We have to do it to ensure more American blood is not shed at the hands of criminals who shouldn't be here in the first place.
Senator Scott.
Let me first start by thanking President Trump and John Cornyn for the jobs that they have done. President Trump for doing what Joe Biden said he could not do, close our southern border. A 95% drop through executive action tells us all as Americans that President Joe Biden failed this nation. And President Trump is succeeding because he has the will and the spine to get it done. I want to thank John Cornyn for introducing this legislation and codifying the actions of President Trump. Absolutely, positively essential that we as a body codify the executive order of President Trump. Thank you for leading. And as a Texan, you understand the amazing, immeasurable weight borne by our states and, more importantly, their citizens because of illegal immigration. Joe Biden created the most dangerous border crisis in American history. More than 10 million illegal immigrants crossing our southern border in just 4 years. His refusal to enforce immigration law allowed millions and millions of illegal aliens into our country, including violent criminals. Americans have been raped. They have been stabbed. They have been beaten. And yes, they have been murdered because of Joe Biden's open border policies. And I'll just tell you, just a few weeks ago, talking to the mother of a college student in my home state of South Carolina who lost her young son because of illegal immigrant killed him. It's one of the hardest conversations you could have with a parent. Doing what is absolutely unnatural, burying your child. Why? Because of the open border policy that allowed an illegal immigrant to take the life of a young, precious soul. This bill will send the kind of deterrent to reduce the number of unnecessary deaths in our country. Thank you for leading the way.
Questions? Yeah, Joe.
So correct me if I'm misunderstanding this, but this would apply to federal cases that are already would be charged. This adds an aggravating factor of status of illegal.
Well, as you know, murder is,
Jurisdiction to other cases. So, for example, in the case of Jocelyn Nungare, would this bill have applied in any way because it wasn't a federal case?
well, as you know, murder is a state crime and can be prosecuted under those laws like the Texas law, and the death penalty can be administered if the jury determines that that's appropriate. If that doesn't happen, then the federal government can step in if there is an underlying connection, like transiting interstate lines. This provides a backup option to state laws. If, in fact, somebody commits murder and is given the death penalty under state law, obviously this won't be needed. But this will be a backup, and one that, particularly in states that do not vigorously pursue the death penalty for murder cases by an illegal immigrant, this will provide federal authorities the option to charge separately.
There's a proposal on the House side that, again, as I understand it, would take that step of extending jurisdiction, federal jurisdiction to cases such as Jocelyn Unveil and these other cases. Is there a reason you guys didn't go that route on this?
Well, there has to, in order for the federal court to have jurisdiction, there has to be some interstate commerce connection. It's, I know, a technicality, but it's important because the primary jurisdiction is going to be the state authorities. But if there is a federal connection, then federal courts can assume jurisdiction. So I have heard about the bill in the House. I don't. We'll look forward to working with them to try to reconcile the differences. But I want to make sure that we're not passing a law that won't stand scrutiny by the courts, which would be the case if, in fact, there was no requirement of a federal jurisdiction underlying the crime. Yes, sir.
How confident are you that you can get bipartisan support for the bill?
Well, we'll see. I'm pretty confident that on the Judiciary Committee that I sit on, that Senator Grassley will bring this up for a vote on the committee, and we'll see where our Democratic colleagues are. Unfortunately, they've been apologists for the failed policies of the Biden administration. I don't know whether that extends to excusing this sort of conduct, heinous conduct by an illegal immigrant against one of their own citizens or not. We'll find out. And, yes, sir.
Have you heard about a desire from your constituents in border communities to carry out the death penalty for people convicted of these crimes?
Well, you've heard some of the names, Jocelyn Unveil, for example, but there have been many more. There's a large list of victims of illegal immigrants that were let into the country under the previous administration. So I have heard a lot of response of outrage, really, at that set of circumstances that caused that young 12-year-old girl to lose her life as a result of an illegal immigrant in the United States. So, yes, we are hearing quite a bit from folks back home. As you might imagine, this is just an outrage and something that people think cries out for justice. Anybody else? Thank you very much. Appreciate it.